Hello and welcome to the Darby Creek Diaries. I'm so happy you're here and I hope you're having a good week. Today I'm going to share the koi card that I posted last week. I broke my nose and had to have surgery, so things got a little delayed. But anyway, here we go. I started off with some 3 distress inks. I'll list everything below. And I just wanted to apply them sporadically on this Hero Arts Waves bold print stamp. And because I wanted there to be color variation, but I didn't want to swipe it on and I didn't want to spray it with water because then I wouldn't have good saturation. So I'm just wiping off my brush there as I change colors, but I'm not real worried about mixing them because it really doesn't matter. It actually will enhance it. I'm kind of just spreading it around. Now you don't need to have a stamping tool positioner to do this. It's just a lot easier. And you don't need blender brushes. You could put it on with anything you want. That just happens to be what I'm using. And I'm trying to get it so it's pretty heavy coated there. Just laying my paper down on a sticky grid, and I decided I ought to move it down to where the stamp actually is. And I had let it kind of dry, so I sort of huffed on it there like in the old days. Now I have kind of a dip in my table, so I'm not real happy with that. I have a desk, but I don't use the hard desk or the side table. No, I use the flimsy table in the middle because that's where my camera is. So I'm reloading and I'm going to try to get get rid of those lines and get a much more even stamping there. And I'm just using a dry eraser. That's a little bit better. It's okay because it's a background. You're going to cover things anyway. So there's going to be a little variation and I'm going to try to fix it a little, but I'm not going to worry about it a bunch because it's going to get covered up anyway. But you can tell I struggle with my table. Now I'm going to wash this off and make sure it's good and clean, but I'm still going to use one of my older Versamark inks. I powder tooled the stamping there, but really you wouldn't have to because you're not going to see it anyway. The reason I'm not just putting Versamark all over the paper and I am doing the stamp is because I want to have no Versamark in where the little white lines are. So I'm just pulling this out and I'm going to add some clear sparkle embossing powder. And you'll want to shake that up because sometimes the sparkly bits kind of all clump to the bottom. And I'm just going to dump all over this. No real rhyme or reason. Just make sure that it's all covered. And you just dump it on some scrap paper. And that's what it looks like before heating. You can still see those little valleys of the white that don't have any embossing on them. And then I put this away right away because I am the queen of dumping over embossing powder. I got my heat tool good and hot. And you can see where it's getting a little darker. That is where you can tell it's cured. You want to keep that heat gun moving because you will burn your paper and this does heat up rather quickly. So you want to keep it moving. And I just have it on that scrap paper, kind of just using a little bit of gravity there because I didn't want to burn my fingers. And there's the finished project. Well, not project, background. Now this is leather paper. It was designed by Tim Holtz for Ranger, and it's in his distress line. The one side is leathery and the other side is just flat. And I'm going to use the leathery side because I thought maybe it would look like fish scales. And we're just going to do the splat method. I'm sure that there's a formal name, but I think it's smushing, but I like the splat method better. I'm picking 3 colors of orangish for my koi and just running my finger through it so we could get those bigger droplets. I'm just pressing this down. Now this paper, it takes it, but it's a little, just a smidge harder to smush. But if you keep after it, it'll do it and it'll wind up looking great. I'm just using a distress sprayer there. You know, I've just lately really been playing with my distress things. I think you probably noticed in my tutorials. I've been watching these Tim Holtz lives, and I'm telling you, it's getting expensive because I place an order after every one because I want to show you guys all the cool stuff and I want to play with it. Now, in between layers, make sure that you dry the paper because these are dyings and not the oxides. So they'll just turn into mud if you don't dry in between layers. We're just going to keep building up, building up, building up. And now we're going to give it another little hit with the heat tool. The heat tool is preferred by Tim because it has a wider opening and it's not blowing as hard as what an embossing gun would. So there is room for both in your arsenal. There's the texture I'm trying to show you, and I'm going to enhance that in a little bit as well. I've got my splat box out and I'm putting some alloys on, and I'm seeing that it's just, there wasn't a really good way for me. I didn't have anything that was flicking very good. So, and I wanted the alloy look. So we have spots, but goldfish have spots. Then I remembered I had some Hero Arts glimmer ink. Now, I don't know that they sell the gold anymore. I wasn't able to find it for you, but in one place, I think. And I tried to, I am splatting it with my toothbrush, but it actually more is going on my thumb. But I will show you, it does make a difference when I bring it up to the camera. Now you can see the little tiny bits. Trust me, it's there. And when you look at it at the end, it'll make a difference. Now I'm giving it a little shimmer spray because we just don't have enough sparklies. And that's kind of hard to tell too, but it kind of gives you an idea there. And I'm going to hit the whole thing with the heat tool one more time before we move on. Here is the Koi Fancy Paper Layering Die set by Hero Arts. It's a two-piece set, and I cut them in two pieces and then I combine them because I don't want you to be able to see the background of the card through my fish. So I cut it out once and then I put the outline die around the inside parts because it doesn't have a cutting die around it, and that way I can layer them together and you won't see anything underneath. You shouldn't. Now I'm fluffing it up because you've got a floof and zhuzh and primp. And I'm bringing up the scales, kind of separating things with my fingers. I use the craft knife as well, but I found that this paper, you know, the craft knife was kind of splitting it. So it's better to use your fingers. And it doesn't matter if you're kind of creasing things because you're going to flatten it back out. And I'm trying to get the tail to have a little bit of movement in it. And then those little bitty scales at the back, flipping up that dorsal fin. Now just glue the very outside of this top piece very carefully because you don't want to glue down all that you just floofed. And then just kind of smoosh it together and give it a little bit of personality. But see now what I mean? If you had no bottom to it, then it would, if you just used the two pieces and only cut it out once, everything you fluffed, you'd see the back of the card front, and I wouldn't, or the front of the card front, and I wouldn't want that. And here's where I take the craft knife, and you know, you can be pretty rough with it, but you just got to be careful of the paper. I mean, you can fluff all you want, but the paper did tend to split, so I kind of quit it. Now I'm opening up his mouth and trying to shape his nose a little bit and glue him down to the background there. Now these fish look really weird without eyes, but instead of stamping them, I'm putting a little bit of Nuvo drops on it to give them a little bit of gloss. And a little bit of personality. Then later, I will put some highlights there. So I'm using pitch black cardstock and I'm running low, so I thought I would just cut out a rectangle in the center and use that on another card, because you're never going to see that anyway. Plus it limits the bulk on the card. And I'm going to layer my piece there on my A2 size card front, and then I'm going to trim off the corners. My paper rounder was probably all of 3 steps away, but you know, hey, I just use what's right next to me. Now it's time to just place our koi. I got a little overzealous with the glue, but it does dry matte and clear. And I'm just laying down my card front. I'll let that set for just a second. And now I'm going to get my sticky sheet out and I'm going to stamp a sentiment. And most people freak out at this. Oh, don't forget the powder bag. They freak out, but I needed to have my sentiment fit in that little circle. So I'm just going to cut it. You can always put it back the way it was, but it makes your stamps more versatile and more usable. So I'm just going to white heat emboss Best Fishes. I've not used this set, so I'm going to rough up the stamps a little bit there so that the ink will adhere well. And just give it a nice press, but not too hard or your letters will get all mushy. And we just put on the white embossing powder and hit it with an already warm heat tool. And it goes very, very quickly. Well, my circle die was just a little bit bigger than I needed. I remembered I had these watch covers from 25 years ago. I think Carol Duvall must have had some project with them or something. So I bought this whole box for $2.95 and now they're 10 times that or more. So I'm sticking my sentiment back there. I have no idea why I bought these, and this is the first one I've used. And that's pretty typical for me. So I get my sentiment in there and I'm going to glue it to the sides. And as I said, this will all dry matte and clear. But I have to put a little bit of foam tape in the middle because it's concave. So I wouldn't be able, the glue isn't going to stick. And I wanted it to have bubbles. So this is a big bubble. And I'm going to add the little highlights to his eyes now with a little tiny bit of white paint. And see, it just brings life to him immediately. You just have to do it. Anything that has eyes, be sure to put a highlight. Now I'm taking some antique linen and I'm going to rub some on my scrap so I can show you how much more of the leathery tops and the gills it accents. So I ran a little bit of that over my koi there at the end. And here he is in all his glory. I also added some clear bubbles from, I believe, I forget. Studio Katia. And there's his little mouth. And so we just have a real big bubble and some little bubbles and all that texture. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, that you'll like, subscribe, share with your friends. That's the best compliment you could ever give me. And follow me on all the other social media. I'm leaving a couple of other videos here for you to watch. I hope you get crafting and have a great day. Bye-bye.